You don't see that passion in a secular society. You don't see that intense desire for continuity. You don't see comfort being taken from continuity. It becomes a very limited vision of life, a very limited vision of your own existence. And what you're seeing now, if across the Western world, and the secular world, is you see this abandonment of their own future, without a concern, without a care.
Why knowledge matters. Welcome, I'm your host Yannick, and now joining me, Rabbi Reuben Poupko from the Beth Zion Congregation here in Montreal. Rabbi, I'm so excited to meet you finally in person. It's so deep and profound what you are talking when you talk, and we know you already did 2 episodes. So I'm really excited talking about you in person, about Judaism, and really the legacy whereupon we stand on, especially Western civilization. So welcome.
Pleasure to be with you.
I really have to tell our viewers how profound it is in this beautiful office here in this beautiful area from Montreal, really. So I'm so glad. So really tell us whereupon we stand when it comes to Western civilization and the contribution of Judaism.
The Jewish civilization goes back a long time. It goes back to the story at the beginning of an individual, of a family, and then ultimately to a larger clan, and then to a people. The story starts with Abraham. The national formative moments took place in Egypt under slavery, and then with redemption from slavery. And the ideas that were first articulated then, the ideas articulated by Abraham and lived by Abraham, and the ideas articulated in the Jewish Bible during the desert experience, those ideas, in my opinion, are as revolutionary today as they were when they were first spoken, and are as vital to our existence, to a meaningful existence today as they were then.
Why do you think it is so important for Western civilization? Give us some examples when it comes to contemporary times, when it comes to the legacy of Judaism.
Well, I think in order to answer that, I should start with the negative first, which is that in the minds of many people, ancient religions have very little to speak to us today. Ancient religions reflect values that should be opposed. They assume that ancient religions are misogynistic, homophobic, racist. That's part of the story. The other part of the story is, the second element is that religion over the last half a century has gotten a bad name. Religion has been used to justify terrible violence. And we've seen that radical terrorism around the world. And we've also seen religion associated with crimes against children in the church. That's another element. And the third element is that the ethic of our day is not always in sync with biblical ideas and Jewish ideas. What I mean by that is we live in a world that is highly individualistic, that doesn't value things like community, doesn't value things like family. And those things, community, family, are really the building blocks, the foundational building blocks of a Jewish civilization. So, for many reasons, whether it's the assumptions about ancient religions, whether it's the recent record of religion in the world, or the contrary values that are so pervasive today, the idea that religion has something relevant to say to people today is that's not an easy idea to convince people of. But what I would argue is that even simple ideas, the notion that there's a common humanity, that we share a common humanity, right? That when you look at the internet and you see people suffering today in Sudan or in Ukraine, and we feel something, and hopefully we act upon that feeling. That feeling we have is because we're all children of the same culture and civilization, which has taught for several millennia that there is one human race. There is a common humanity. That very notion was a radical idea when it was first proposed. That's a radical idea proposed first by Judaism, where we said if there's one God, that means there's one human race, the common humanity that we share a legacy, that your God is my God, there's one God, and we share something together. Maybe we're even responsible for each other. And that idea of a common humanity, which so energizes good people till today, is an idea that is fundamentally rooted in religion. So that's one idea. The other idea is, I think, the sanctity of every life is fundamentally originally a Jewish idea. And all of these ideas which I'm talking about are in no way should anyone think that these are exclusively Jewish ideas. They were originally, but thankfully they've been embraced by all the great monotheistic religions. The idea that there's one God and therefore one human race. The fact that every human being deserves dignity. An idea which has helped give birth to democratic revolutions throughout history. Right? The idea that every human being deserves something and deserves dignity because we're all created in the image of God, that energized democracies. One could even argue that that was the source of democratic thinking in the Western world, was the idea that the state doesn't have complete power. It can't have complete power because I'm a child of God and I deserve dignity. And I have rights. I have inalienable rights, as the Declaration of Independence put in the United States. I have rights. And, this used to be a common idea. John F. Kennedy, the first Catholic president of the United States, when he was inaugurated, one of the things he said was, the rights of man come not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God. That's what he said. And it's not around, today you don't hear that. And it's 50 years, 60 years after Kennedy. And you don't hear that today. But the reality is the very idea of human rights, of a common humanity, of the dignity of every person, all of those ideas exist only because of religion, because of Judaism originally, and after that the other monotheistic religions.
Now, what would you say to someone who says, well, that's really good, however, today we might be grateful for these ideas, but now we can, because we live in a secular society where there is basically no God, it simply doesn't matter anymore. Why would you say it still matters if we have a common reference, kind of a north where we can point to?
I would argue that these ideas can certainly exist without being understood as being rooted in religion. But that can't go on forever. In other words, the fruit of the religious tree can survive for a long time without the tree, but not forever. And unless we truly understand, appreciate, and embrace the origin of these ideas, ultimately they will wilt. Ultimately they expire. Human nature, we can argue about human nature, whether man is basically good or not, or neutral. But we know enough history to know that human beings left to their own devices don't always make the right choices. And unless there is a an overarching framework for it, a rootedness for it, it's hard to believe that decency and goodness will win.
Sure.
I have to.
Sure.
I'm sorry. It's about a funeral.
Not a problem at all.
Hey, no, what's up? Good. That's fine. That's fine. All right, no, do me a favor. I'm happy you called. I was going to call you. I told them I would meet them around 4:00. But he confirmed that was okay. My day's gotten a little crazy. Where do they live? They live in Côte Saint-Luc? All right, can you do me a favor? Could you tell them something came up in my schedule and ask them if I can meet with them tomorrow morning instead? All right? Okay, thanks. Sorry.
No problem.
We can continue. Okay, good. All right, I forget where I was. Okay, go ahead.
So what you're basically saying is that if we leave God or a divine being somehow completely out of the picture, in the future ultimately we will also these values that emerged out of this will actually be at danger.
Yes.
And can you give me some contemporary, potentially if there are some contemporary examples of that?
Listen, I think if you look at Western societies in general that have disconnected themselves from religious life and have lived now for 3 and 4 generations in what you rightfully call the secular world, where are they now? Western Europe is barely able to populate their own countries. Families have dissolved. Children aren't being born. That doesn't portend well for the future. I mean, if you want to celebrate Western culture, Western civilization, French culture, wherever you look, how can that survive without people? And there is something inherently optimistic in living a life centered in faith, and that you want to bless the next generation with the blessing of life and faith. You want your ideas to continue. If you really revere your ideas and you revere what you live for, you want to bestow that upon children. You want what you live for to continue beyond yourself. It's crucially important. We see what has happened to a world that has disconnected these ideas from their origin. They are not driven by a passionate desire to see these ideas live beyond themselves. They're perfectly happy leaving this world without anything that follows them. Right? They're living lives where children aren't being born, where families aren't being created, where communities aren't being sustained. Faith communities are hopeful communities. They want these ideas. They want their lifestyle. They want their choices to outlive themselves. They want to know that what they value, their children will value. You don't see that passion in a secular society. You don't see that intense desire for continuity. You don't see comfort being taken from continuity. It becomes a very limited vision of life, a very limited vision of your own existence. And what you're seeing now, if across the Western world, and the secular world, is you see this abandonment of their own future without a concern, without a care. I don't hear regret. I don't see remorse. And that which animates the lives of people with faith is the idea that the things they live for, they want to continue, they want to have continue after their lives are over. because that's what gives their lives a sense of eternity. The fact that these ideas persist after themselves. I've been with many people who've left this world, and the concern on their minds is their children. The comfort they get is from knowing what they lived for will continue. And when you live for very little, and the ideas that you've embraced are fleeting and not rooted, what are you hoping for? What are you hoping for in the future? I mean, you even have environmentalists talking about how it's unethical to have children today. That's what the secular world has produced. You know, in a desire amongst some, and I believe it's a fringe, to commit a collective suicide. Because what meaning is there in their lives that they're so passionate about seeing it continue? Those who are passionate about their lives want it to continue. Those who care deeply about their ideas want those ideas to continue. And that passion and that intensity, I haven't seen in the secular arena.
It's so important what you're saying, because as Elon Musk he might be a contested figure, but he said the greatest risk for our future, especially in the West, is underpopulation. We have not enough.
Right, we don't have enough people.
It's
the only reason America has dodged it because of immigration. But generally speaking, it's underpopulation.
Mm-hmm. Even in China, actually.
Right.
In the whole world. It is so important what you're saying, because when it comes to family, I can testify now, the older I get, the more friends who have kids, you can tell there is something also beyond. You can tell the energy that they live for something. That's why I'm extremely blessed that I have more and more really good, deep friends who are parents now, because they show me, wow, what it does. And I always think about, if I never had potentially children, you don't know, right? You never know. But if there is something there that you truly will miss. I think there is just the emotion, unconditional love for someone, right? And that's a really important point.
I'm blessed with children. I'm blessed with grandchildren. I can't imagine living in an alternative universe. The energy that we give to our children, the energy we get from our children, the fact that it expands our horizons to the future, the fact that you can sit, for instance, at a Passover Seder table and look at your grandchildren and know for sure that long after you're gone, your grandchildren are going to be sitting where you're sitting with their grandchildren, saying this exact same story that you're telling, is overwhelmingly inspiring and moving and gives meaning and purpose to your life. To see that continuity. I'm sitting in an office, I see the pictures of my grandparents. I know that if they came back to life, they would recognize every single aspect of my life. They would know exactly what I'm doing every morning, every Sabbath, every holiday. I know that I live exactly the way they did. And I may not speak the same language. I use different technology, but I know that their values are 100% mine, and I know my grandchildren's values will be mine. I know that. I may be proven wrong, but right now I know it. And I know how my children are raising their children. And it is that continuity which gives purpose to living a life centered on these ideas, on these values, on Jewish values. Because you know it will outlast you. And you know, just as it outlasted my grandparents, I know that it'll outlast me. And I know that therefore I am part of a chain of tradition that goes back 3,700 years to Abraham, and will be here as long as the earth goes around the sun.
You know what's very interesting is what I'm curious about is that a lot also will potentially argue, and I'm curious what you think about that, is that, well, it doesn't really matter if we have children or not, because ultimately, if we believe there is an afterlife, and if we believe that we go potentially in heaven or wherever, we are going to, then that's just, a human concern. What would you respond to that?
Judaism believes in heaven. We believe that the soul is forever, but we're also told to focus on this world. And it is this world that is our focus. One of the great statements of the rabbis is, it is better to have one moment in this world doing good than all of the reward of the world to come. We're put here for this world. The other world cannot be my concern. I live in this world, and in this world, I know what my people have contributed to the world. I know I don't know. I hope we still have much to contribute. I know that our values are still relevant, and I know it adds meaning and purpose to life. Also, I know that they are authentic and real. And I know that I am part of an incredible story, which is the story of the Jewish people. And I'm proud to be part of that story. And I know that my children are proud to be part of that story. And that is what animates our life.
What I find so interesting is that when you talk about Judaism and how critical it is, especially also the people it produces. And that's always, to me, when I look at stats, when we look at Nobel Prize winners and so on, and some people, unfortunately, and I know where it's coming from, they use some conspiracy theories. And what I always say is,
what possible conspiracy?
I will tell you.
I thought I knew
People say, no, I know, but people say, for example, well, they are just like this, somehow a conspiracy, whatever. But I always go and point to the book, because that's precisely what you say. Jewish people, they put an incredible emphasis on the most important thing in the world. That's their growth when it comes to intellectual,
right? Well, listen, what are we taught since we're children? That study is equal to all of the other commandments. Study. The study of the Torah, the study of the Bible, the study of Talmud, the study of Mishnah. Study above all. Remember, the most unique thing about the human being is what? Is our intellect, our mind. That's what makes us distinctively human. And if you don't serve God with the best of you, what's it worth? Right? And that's why we always believed that study is a religious obligation. Study is an expression of our religion. Study to understand God's law, to understand God's words, to spend your life studying. That's what study is. The first obligation is study. So we are not genetically superior. We are simply the very lucky beneficiaries of a tradition that always valued education. Wherever we went in the world, what's the first thing we did? We didn't build synagogues first. We built schools first. First thing we did was build a school. And that's what we do. We've done that everywhere. And we've always believed that educating our children, provoking the curiosity of our children, valuing their questions as we do at the Passover Seder, that those cultural values are what produces, what we've been able to contribute. Isidore Rabi was a Jewish kid, born in Poland. He came to America when he was a baby, went to Brooklyn public schools. He won the Nobel Prize in physics. And when he won the Nobel Prize, he gave a speech in Oslo. And he said, the reason I'm standing here today is because every day when I came home from school, my mother never asked me what I learned. My mother only asked me one question. Did you ask a good question to me? And that's the culture of the Jewish people. It's been that way from biblical times. There's nothing new about this. We were always taught to ask. When Abraham is told that the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah were going to be destroyed, and he wanted to pray for them, did he throw himself on the ground and beg for mercy? No. He stood up to God and he said, it can't be that there aren't righteous people there. He challenged God. He asked God. And yet he said to God, Hashofet kol haaretz lo ya'aseh mishpat, can the judge of the world not do justice? There must be 50, 45 righteous, 40 righteous. He didn't give up. The first prayer is an argument. The first prayer is a question. The first prayer encounter is a debate. That's what we've been doing from the very beginning. That's how we always lived. Because God gave us a mind. It's the most distinctively human feature is our mind. And therefore you have to use your intellect in the service of that which we value most, which is our faith. And we spend our days studying. That is how we always spent our time. And we achieved universal literacy when it was nothing more than a pipe dream anywhere else. But again, it's not from the DNA. It's from the values, what we've always valued, and values we're more than happy to share with others.
How did your work change over time when it comes to the fact that we live more and more in a secular culture? Because I'm sure there are also many secular Jewish people.
Absolutely. You know, it's depressing at times, but more often than not, it's very inspiring because I'm very lucky. I'm in a synagogue with many people who are deeply involved in the culture of our day, involved in every arena of normal Canadian life, and yet are intensely devoted to their Jewish lives. They've proven that you don't have to choose, that you can be very creative and productive in the outside world while being fully devoted to Jewish life without a scintilla of compromise. They managed to do it, and they do it. They raise their children that way. It is quite inspiring. So in many ways, my job is easier today than it was 30 years ago because for a variety of reasons, it has worked out for us. In other words, we are able to build our schools, maintain our synagogues in a way which continues to attract young people. Our struggle is with those who were denied a Jewish education and therefore can't appreciate what we have. But those who were exposed to Jewish life, they continue to embrace it with great passion and to teach it to their children.
How do you see the future if we start or continue neglecting these values for the Western society?
Listen, I think there are some things in life and in history which seem to be cyclical, some to be linear. It's not clear. I believe religion is cyclical, I think, although no one can predict the future. I think that I'm beginning to sense in what I read about trends amongst young people is that although organized religion is not revered at this moment, there continues to be a search, a recognize. They understand they're missing something. They're looking for something. And I believe that that there will be a turn back to religion in a very thoughtful way, in a selective way. But I think they will. I think there is a thirst out there for a sense of meaning and purpose, a sense of a desire for that which is authentic, which has proven the test of time. And I think that it's possible that we're on the verge of a religious revival. Again, no one can speak with certainty about the future, but I sense a longing out there. People understand that the secular world we've created, where community and family aren't there to hold us up, that we're missing something. And there will be, I think, efforts to restore that people who were denied it themselves will want it for themselves and give it to their children.
And I think you are really a great example, because if someone listens to you, it's really inspiring. And I think that's also what is so important is that you have more and more also people who are engaged and who enroll in those kind of programs. So that is really inspiring. What makes you personally feel alive?
What makes me feel alive? Two things. Two things, and it's all you need. Maybe two things is my identity as a Jew and my identity as a father and grandfather.
That's beautiful. I think it really, we can't deny that's the value that you truly embody and that you just mentioned before.
That's what informs my life and gives me great satisfaction and joy.
I can really tell that this is the case. Thank you so much, Rabbi Reuben Poupko, to accommodating me so nicely here in your beautiful office in this beautiful part of Montreal, and I look forward to converse with you in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Rabbi Reuben Poupko.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
That's why knowledge matters.